Line is the play-by-play broadcaster for the Wareham Gateman of the Cape Cod Baseball League, Javik Blake. Javik, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks so much for having me on, Frank.
Oh, thanks for coming on. Javik, why don't, before we get started, for those individuals, I'm familiar with the Cape Cod League because I lived up there and I played baseball on the Cape for a couple of years. You know, when I was in high school, we used to visit down there all the time and play spring ball. Why don't you explain to our listeners what the Cape Cod League is and why do players come there to play in the summer?
Yeah, no worries. So the Cape Cod Baseball League is really the premier college summer baseball league in the country. So what you have is your guys playing the regular season, LSU, Ole Miss, Vandy, all those sorts of things. And after their season ends, they still have all the summer left to, work on different things. They go to the Cape League, and it's sort of a way for them to sort of refine their skills, sort of, get to that next level and put into practice in more of a laid-back environment. It's not, the hardcore stuff you're going to see at Ole Miss and stuff. It's sort of a more laid-back kind of environment, but it's really a place where you gather the best college guys in the country all together. There are tons of scouts at every single game. It's basically, like 10 college all-star teams playing together throughout the summer. So there are 10 teams scattered throughout the Cape, 5 of them in the West Division, 5 of them in the East Division. They play 40 games this year. They lowered the schedule down from 44 to 40. But they played 40 games across, starting this year. What has started June 13th had, COVID-19 not have happened and the season hadn't gotten canceled. But it starts around, June 13th, around then, and goes all the way until mid-August. And these guys just kind of show off for the scouts, and it's some of the best amateur baseball in the country, all wood bats as well. So it's something the scouts really look at to evaluate players to the next level. And it's a place where, stars can be born. We thought last year with Nick Gonzalez, came in from New Mexico State as, sort of a guy that people were a little curious about. He had done well in the regular season, but he was playing in New Mexico State, a ballpark known for its high altitude. But then he comes to the Cape League, and all of a sudden he goes up. It's over 300, wins league MVP, and everyone's talking about him as maybe a top 10 pick this spring.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of players I remember that played in the Cape Cod League. I mean, there's such players as Craig Biggio, Carlton Fisk, Frank Thomas, Will Clark, Evan Longoria, just to name a few. Let me ask you this, Javik. You mentioned the cancellation. What kind of effect has it had on that area, the Cape Cod League being canceled, and how is it going to affect some of these players, like you said, who come there to be showcased to the scouts, not just for this year, but even for the next year's draft?
Well, I think that's an interesting thing. Obviously, it's sad for the area around Cape Cod because that's sort of the thing in Cape Cod in the summer. When you're not at the beach, you're usually at a baseball game if you live somewhere on Cape Cod. So, it's awful for those people. It's heartbreaking, for the families, for the front offices, for everyone involved in the league, just because it's so family-run. And it's such, just a place where the people that work in the league are some of the nicest in the world. I mean, the people that I've met through my time the last 3 years of the Wareham Gateman are some of the best people I've met in baseball. And, it's just a great atmosphere for baseball all summer long. So it's really heartbreaking for the people across Cape Cod that, don't get to have that this year. But it's also heartbreaking for the players because, once again, you have guys like Nick Gonzalez, whose draft stock skyrocketed last year. That won't happen this year. So we won't see guys sort of, those guys in the rough that come to the Cape League, maybe with not too much pedigree, and then come out of the Cape League as stars. You won't see that happening this year, which really is unfortunate that we won't get to see that because it's always fun to see those massive success stories of guys that use the Cape League as basically a springboard to a high draft pick, and it's really cool to see, and it's unfortunate that we won't get to see that this
year. Yeah, it definitely is because like you said, Cape Cod baseball is some of the best baseball, or probably is the best baseball out there. Now, the draft has changed, and I know we just, a little bit here and there we mentioned it, but it went from 40 rounds, as you're accustomed to, down to 5 rounds. From a Cape Cod League perspective, how is that going to affect the players there?
Well, I don't think it'll affect them too much. I think it'll more affect guys in some different summer leagues, because most of the guys in the Cape are usually going to be high draft picks. I mean, your stars are going to be your stars. Adley Rutschman played in the Cape. He was the number one pick for the Orioles last year. So the guys who are going to be your stars will end up getting picked in the first 5 rounds. But what I think it sort of hurts is those back-end guys in the Cape, the guys who sort of came in as the unknown. I'll use Jacob Teeter as an example. He played for the Gateman last year. He comes from Florida Southern. He's sort of a guy that, last year no one really knew who he is, but he had a great season. But maybe since he plays for a team like Florida Southern, he won't get the looks of the guy who would play for Vandy, Ole Miss, South Carolina, those sort of guys who would go in the first 5 rounds. So it hurts the players like him, and it hurts the guys who might not get picked in the first 5 rounds and still have a chance to blossom when they get picked in the 6th, 7th, or 8th round.
Now, from my understanding, they can still sign with any team after that as a free agent. The major difference is they only get I think it's a $20,000 signing bonus.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. So they do get that $20,000 signing bonus, and the draft slots are capped at $100,000 paid right out. So you get paid $100,000 now, and then increments down the road.
Right. And so let me ask you, forget about the draft this year. Let's talk about previous years. Do you think 40 rounds is too many rounds?
I think there's definitely an argument to be made that 40 rounds is too many, but I think the counter-argument to that is 5 isn't enough. Because you see a lot of guys, I saw them a couple of days ago, 14% of the top 900 prospects, because MLB Pipelines is the top 30 for each of the 30 teams. So looking at that, 14 to 16% of players drafted past the 5th round end up being one of those 900 players. So it's really interesting to see that. Is 40 rounds too many? I think there's definitely an argument to be made, but that argument also it has to be made with the reduction of minor league baseball teams, because we've seen the whole contraction thing, yada, yada, yada. If that ends up going through, then yes, 40 rounds might be too much. Because the reason the 40 rounds is so long is you need to fill out those lower-level teams. You need to fill out your rookie teams. You need to fill out your short season A team. You still need to have guys left over for your Gulf Coast or your AZA team. So I think, in a way, that 40 rounds is a great number if you have all those teams. If you don't have those teams at those lower levels, speaking like of those rookie advanced teams, of those short season A teams, yes, it becomes too many, but it is a shame that, they're looking to cut down the draft. They're looking to cut out affiliates. But 40 rounds is good at the moment, but I think there's definitely an argument to be made of cutting it down, maybe to 2025, like we're going to see next year in the draft, if contraction ends up happening.
Now, there's 261 minor league teams. To me, and once again, this is only my opinion, I think that's too much because, only 1 out of every 10 AAA player makes it to the Major League Baseball. 1 out of 10. I believe if you go through the whole farm system and every minor league team that's out there, it's 1 out of every 6 players. It's a very low number, and my question to you is, and you mentioned a great point earlier in here, is you see up to 100 scouts a day. Do you think maybe the quality of scouts, especially with the technology that we have today, do you think maybe maybe we don't need that many teams, maybe we don't need that many rounds, maybe we need more qualified scouts?
Well, I think the counterpoint to that would be, do you want to grow the game of baseball? Because I think that's the main thing these minor league teams really do. Because yes, if you look at it in a nutshell, and if you look at it, just black and white, the minor leagues are made for their top product. The filler guys are just there to be fillers, to have someone to play against for the guys like Adley Rutschman or Kumar Rocker when they get drafted. I think that's sort of the counterpoint to what you're saying. But I think you have to look at it that these teams bring so much to these communities. There are teams across the country where if these towns don't have a minor league baseball team, they're not connected to Major League Baseball in any way, shape, or form. You look at the entirety of the Northwest teams. Northwest League, which is the short season A league, you have teams in Idaho, Wyoming, Montana, Utah. If those teams are taken away, where's your nearest ballpark? Where's your closeness to baseball, especially Montana? I don't think college in Montana plays baseball either. So you got to see it as a way to grow the game, take it across the country, because baseball is so regionalized that these affiliates really are the lifeline to Major League Baseball, into baseball for these towns, and it's such a huge thing in these towns. It means so much to them. Having it taken away really would take away for the whole, growing the game and growing the fans and growing the following that I think Major League Baseball and everyone in baseball desperately wants to do.
We are talking to Javik Blake, the play-by-play announcer for the Wareham Gateman of the Cape Cod League. I understand your point there and the community involvement, but minor league baseball is a lot of players playing under poverty conditions. Remember, these players don't even get paid minimum wage. A AAA player is lucky if he gets $700 a week, where a minor league, a single A player is lucky if he gets $400 a week. Do you think that maybe, and I understand the point about communities, but let's say you take away 40 teams like they're talking about doing, is it worth taking those away and paying these AA and AAA guys a little bit more money so they can at least survive?
Well, I think, as we've seen with anything, I think it's an understanding that Major League Baseball has the money. Because if you look at the revenue last year, they made $10.7 billion in revenue.
Yep.
So I think a way to look at it is Major League Baseball has the capabilities to sort of, distribute a little more money to the minor league guys. You've already seen them doing, it's bumped up here. The only thing is that minor leaguers almost get the short end of the stick because they don't have a union. They don't have a collective bargaining agreement. And, they're kind of at the mercy of their organization. And I think a thing that we're seeing is that, these minor league players aren't getting paid enough. And I think Major League Baseball's response is to cut out some teams to free up some money to pay them. But I think, the opposite side of that, baseball fans' response, well, why don't you just pay them anyways? And I think for a league that, they only publicize the revenue, they don't publicize, their profits or that thing. I think it's a little harder of a judgment to make from a fan perspective. But I do think, minor leaguers, especially in baseball, they deserve to be paid at least the minimum wage. The FBS, the Fair Business Labor Act of 1938, the one that guaranteed everyone a minimum wage they're exempt from. I think that needs to be changed, but I think that, starts with Congress. And I think that's really the way to help minor league baseball is through Congress. But it's a really intricate situation, and I think there's two completely different sides of it. You're either in the cut 40, free up money, pay these guys more, or keep the structure and just pay these guys more of the existing money you have. I think it's two wildly fascinating arguments, but it's so wide-ranging, it's so complex. It's a really interesting conversation to have, but it's so wide-ranging, and there's so many unknown factors that frankly, basically everyone can't exactly, find out because MLB does not publicize them.
Now, this year, minor leagues, as far as we know it, is not going to go on. Now, we'll talk a second because we got a few more minutes here, but we'll get to the question in a minute about the major league season. But these minor leaguers, unless they expand some of their rosters on the major league level, which they're going to do, a lot of them are losing a year of service. And what I mean by that is from an age standpoint, now a guy that would have been 23 is now going to be 24. Do you think the loss of this year in minor league baseball is going to affect some players in that way?
Well, without a doubt, it's going to affect players. It's going to affect a lot of guys. As you said, there are over 6,500 minor league baseball players across 261 teams. That's a lot of players. To lose a year of baseball, to lose a year of competitive baseball is huge for these guys' development. Guys like Adley Rutschman, now he's going to be delayed a year. He's a guy we could have seen in the major leagues next year for the Baltimore Orioles. So I think that it's a huge thing for these players to, lose this year because of the fact that, it's all about development. In baseball, the reason it takes so long to get to the big leagues is it takes long to just adjust to the pitching in every single league, or the pitcher adjusts to the hitters and how to pitch every fifth day. Because the baseball schedule is so much different than what you play in college. College is so much different than what you play in high school. I think from a development standpoint, it's massive that these players are losing a season. And I think, it's not going to help them in any way, shape, or form, but they're all on a level playing field. Everyone will have lost a year. So I think, it's going to be a huge loss for these players. But again, they're going to be on a level playing field. So I don't think, we'll see the effects that much, but it's just unfortunate for these guys, work so hard, have gone all this way, only to have this entire season washed away.
Now, before we let you go, we're talking to Javik Blake, play-by-play announcer of the Wareham Gateman of the Cape Cod League. He also does play-by-play for Elon University. Javik, later today, I guess late yesterday, Major League Baseball put that proposal in to the players to try to get the season started. Now, obviously, it goes without saying that neither side has anything to gain by not playing baseball. My question to you is, and I know the biggest thing is going to be the revenue sharing part, which the owners are going to want right now. At a time where we shouldn't be arguing over stuff, to get the season going, what do you think the chances of us in the next 24 to 48 hours hearing that the baseball season, Major League Baseball, is going to begin?
I think in the next 48 hours, them agreeing on a deal is extremely unlikely. You look at the way the sides are currently, and it doesn't look like they're going to come to agreement, at least in the next week or so. And I think, a big thing in business is your first offer is never your best offer, and that's what it looks like from Major League Baseball. I think they've set out, kind of a framework, and them and the Players Association can kind of work together to negotiate these things out, because as you said, the financials are going to be a huge part of this. But then you look at what Sean Doolittle was tweeting about yesterday. What about testing? What about if a family member tests positive? What about if a player tests positive? Where are these tests coming from? How are we going to do it? It's so widespread currently. How is Major League Baseball going to effectively, test players, make sure they're okay, and make sure, not just the players, but the front office staff, the broadcasters, the trainers, the cooks, all the stadium workers, how are they going to make sure they're okay and they're healthy and safe? And I think beyond the financials, that's the biggest hurdle for Major League Baseball coming back, is to make sure that you can keep everybody safe and healthy. And I think that should be the number one priority of Major League Baseball and the Players Association. But the financials is a big one as well. These players signed an agreement a couple of weeks ago saying, we're going to take a prorated salary, we'll play it on a per game basis and all that sort of thing. And then Major League Baseball will go back on that. I think the Players Union is like, well, wait a minute, we already had an agreement. What happened to that? So I think it's going to be an interesting negotiations, and hopefully, clear heads prevail, and we don't end up something like we saw in 1994 where the entire season's wiped away. But I think, it's a big thing for baseball, but I think priority number one needs to be, and I think the Players Association and Major League Baseball agree to this, is that everyone, they need to find a way where everyone can be safe and healthy and taken care of. And I think that's the number one thing, that should matter to Major League Baseball and MLB, and then the finances.
All right, Javik, I want to thank you very, very much for joining us today on Frankly Speaking Sports, and make sure you stay safe, my friend.
Yeah, thank you so much, Larry. You as well.
All right.